seconds later, the tire exploded and struck the mechanic before flying upward, where it broke through the ceiling and landed on the roof.
Good Lord.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
It's time for Boss Watch, folks. That is the segment where we take a look at bosses breaking the law, which they do every week, all the time. In fact, bosses break the law more often than working people, but they don't go to prison for it, funny enough. But we do. If we break the law, we're going to go to prison, but not your boss. So let's see what bosses were up to across the South this week. In North Carolina, a Durham construction services contractor, R&R Construction Maintenance of North Carolina, stole more than $800,000 from its employees.
Ooh.
$800,000. Can you imagine? They would put me under the jail if I stole $750,000. Under the jail, that's where I would go. So this contractor was forced to pay back wages along with an equal amount in damages to the 188 affected workers by the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of North Carolina in 2022. And this is being announced today because finally, almost at the end of 2023, the U.S. Department of Labor has finally recovered the stolen money. So the workers now finally have the money back. The back wages and the damages from the contractor. This theft occurred because the company denied workers minimum wage and overtime wages, and the workers were misclassified as independent contractors. Heading over to Arkansas, we have a couple of creeps. The EEOC alleges that Simply Slims in Hot Springs, Arkansas, violated federal law when it subjected a class of teenagers, and young adults to sexual harassment and a sexually hostile work environment. According to the EEOC's lawsuit, a shift manager made inappropriate sexual comments to a young female. The young female immediately reported the comments to the general manager. While receiving notice of the sexual harassment, the company failed to address the harassment, and the shift manager continued to harass other young female employees, including teenagers. Wow. Here's what he did. The shift manager would brush up against the girls intentionally. He would rub their shoulders, poke them in inappropriate places. He fondled the breast of one young female, touched one on her bottom, and placed his hand on the inner thigh of another. Eventually, the sexual harassment forced several of the employees to resign. You do this stuff out of the workplace and you go to jail, right? If you do it inside the workplace, you're going to get a slap on the wrist. It's insane. The laws in this country are wild. Such alleged conduct violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits sexual harassment in the workplace. The EEOC filed suit in the U.S. District Court of the Western District of Arkansas after first attempting to reach a pre-litigation settlement through conciliation process. The suit seeks monetary relief in the form of back pay, compensatory and punitive damages, compensation for lost benefits, and an injunction against future discrimination. Slim Chickens is a fast casual restaurant specializing in wings, tenders, sandwiches, and wraps headquartered in Fayetteville, Arkansas. It has over 200 locations.
Wow.
Crazy
Nobody
stuff.
should ever have to deal with that. Certainly not in the workplace.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let's head it over to Alabama, where there's a story from June that we missed, where federal workplace safety inspectors determined the operator of a southern Alabama tire shop could have prevented a 45-year-old mechanic's fatal injuries by following required safety standards. An investigation by the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, found the tire service mechanic and an apprentice had just inflated a tractor tire after mounting it on its rim at Neil Tyndall Tire, LLC, in Opp, Alabama, on January the 18th of 2023, when seconds later the tire exploded as the mechanic leaned over to unhook the air compressor's hose. The tire then struck the mechanic before flying upward, where it broke through the ceiling and landed on the roof.
Good Lord.
And it killed him. The OSHA inspectors learned the air compressor the two workers used had been set to inflate the tire at 110 pounds per square inch of pressure when the tire that exploded had a maximum load carrying capacity of 35 pounds of pressure per square inch. Over 3 times the maximum capacity. The agency determined that the tire shop allowed employees to inflate tires on single-piece rim wheels without using a required restraining device or a barrier for protection against tire explosion. In addition, OSHA cited the company for exposing workers to struck-by hazards by allowing workers to remain in an unsafe area while inflating tires, and for failing to prevent workers from inflating tires above the manufacturer's maximum recommended pressure. And here's the penalty for this. And this is important because, you know, we had a conversation over a year ago with some bosses here in Huntsville. And you can find it on our channel. I think the title of the clip is Adam and Jacob explain labor law to 2 bosses for 2 hours, something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they talked about how, I have to take so much risk because I'm an employer, because if anything happens to my employees, I could go to jail, which is almost universally not true. It's just a lie. Or, well, I mean, these are young people. They probably don't know. That's probably just what the other bosses that they're learning from told them. So they're probably not lying when they say that. They're just misinformed. They don't know anything about the law. Here's what Neil Tyndall Tire LLC faced for killing a man. A proposed penalty of $14,511. Neil Tyndall Tire LLC has been operating in Opp, Alabama since 1998, specializing in the distribution, sale, and installation of new and used tires for cars, pickups, semi-trucks, and tractors. The company has a 440,000 square foot tire storage warehouse.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Heading over to Texas, where Mewburn Oil Company has agreed to pay a $5.5 million penalty for illegal pollution in New Mexico and Texas, and undertake projects expected to cost at least $4.6 million to ensure 422 of its oil and gas well pads in New Mexico and Texas comply with state and federal clean air regulations and offset past illegal emissions. These terms, here's what it's for. They're in settlement of claims alleged in a civil complaint filed by the EPA and the New Mexico Energy Department that alleges that at more than 100 of its oil and gas production operations in New Mexico and Texas, the company Mewburn failed to obtain required state and federal permits, and they failed to capture and control air emissions from storage vessels, and failed to comply with inspection, monitoring, and record-keeping requirements. The EPA and the New Mexico Environmental Department identified the alleged violations through field investigations and repeated flyover surveillance conducted in 2019, 2020, and 2022. Mewburn's actions taken pursuit to the deal will eliminate more than 11,000 tons of harmful pollutants from the air each year. And these pollutants are in relation to volatile organic compounds, VOCs. And those VOCs are a component in the formation of ground-level ozone, which irritates the lungs, exacerbates diseases such as asthma, and can increase susceptibility to respiratory illnesses, such as pneumonia and bronchitis. So this isn't just like emission stuff. This is stuff that is going to kill people, going to severely decrease their quality of life. And in addition, a co-benefit of these reductions, which are going to total 11,000 tons. Today's settlement is going to eliminate 11,000 tons of harmful air pollutants. The Principal Deputy Assistant Administrator Larry Starfield of the EPA's Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance That's how much harmful air pollutants is going to be reduced by these orders. In addition, as a co-benefit, the consent decree will result in significant reductions of greenhouse gas emissions, including reducing methane, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. 1,300 tons of annual methane reductions equates to more than 33,000 tons of carbon dioxide. And eliminating the release of this amount of methane per year is similar to eliminating the annual use of 3.4 million gallons of gasoline. So very important thing happening over in Texas. Here's the final story that we're going to dig into. Amazon lying, which is not an uncommon occurrence.
Wow. You don't say.
Story from Vice Motherboard. And Adam, you know how Amazon claims that actually Amazon drivers are not employees of Amazon.
Right.
They're employees of contractors that Amazon contracts with. So they're not Amazon's employees. They're like Delivery Service Professional Incorporated's employees. And they're not a joint employer. And specifically, this is actually literally what they said in an email to a reporter about their reporting about their treatment about these drivers. They said, quote, "These drivers are not Amazon drivers, actually, but drivers who deliver for Amazon," which is a very critical factual difference.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that distinction is in fact important, because if it is true that these Amazon drivers are not in fact Amazon employees, then that means that Amazon is not a joint employer and therefore does not have to bargain with these employees if they elect to unionize. However, if Amazon is lying, which they are, let's be honest, it would mean that under the law, they would be mandated to bargain with drivers that unionize. And, while it may seem obvious that Amazon is a joint employer to its delivery drivers, considering that Amazon dictates literally every aspect of the job, we have another piece of evidence directly from Amazon themselves, which is that they spent over $160,000 last year on anti-union consultants, specifically to dissuade drivers that work for their contractors from unionization. Now, if they aren't their employees, then why does Amazon care if they unionize or not? That's pretty strange.
Right.
Trying to influence another company's employees in their decision to unionize, that's strange behavior for an uninterested party. So there we go, folks. That's Boss Watch. We do have a few dishonorable mentions. Aurora Pro Services, a North Carolina-based residential home service and repair company, has agreed to pay $50,000 and provide other relief to settle a religious harassment, discrimination, and retaliation lawsuit brought because all employees were made to attend a daily employer-led Christian prayer meeting and reprimanded employees who did not attend, up to and actually including termination for employees who did not want to pray with their boss. Wild stuff happening in North Carolina. The EEOC announced a lawsuit against HCA Healthcare Incorporated, which is a for-profit corporation headquartered in Nashville, because they violated federal law by refusing to promote an employee because of his age, race, and national origin, and fired him in retaliation for complaining internally to his employer about the discrimination. The EEOC also announced a lawsuit against Silver Bay Seafood Restaurant Incorporated because they violated a federal law when it subjected a female employee to a sexually hostile work environment. Specifically, she alleges she was continually sexually harassed and touched. The U.S. Department of Labor recovered a little over $7,000 for one worker illegally fired for his protected use of family and medical leave by his employer, Home 2 Suites in Shreveport, Louisiana. Here's one we missed from April. The Williams companies agreed to a settlement that requires them to pay $3.75 million civil penalty and spend an estimated $8.5 million to come into compliance after the companies violated leak detection and repair requirements in federal, state, and tribal clean air laws, resulting in excess emissions of VOCs. We just talked about that earlier. Those lead to serious public health concerns, including respiratory illnesses, aggravation of existing heart disease, and exacerbation of asthma. Young children and the elderly are especially sensitive to these impacts, and this affects natural gas processing plants owned by this company across the South, including in Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Texas. The EPA issued a proposed denial to Alabama's permit program to manage coal combustion residuals after they identified deficiencies in the Alabama Department of Environmental Management's permits, with closure requirements for unlined service impoundments, groundwater monitoring networks, and corrective action requirements. The EPA discussed these issues with ADEM. However, the state agency has not revised its permits or supplemented its application to explain how such permits are as protective as the federal requirements. Under federal regulations, surface impoundments cannot be closed if, once closure is complete, the coal ash continues to be saturated by groundwater. Facilities must prevent groundwater from infiltrating and flowing out of the closed unit to prevent additional groundwater contamination. In contrast, Alabama does not require that groundwater infiltration be adequately addressed during the closure of these coal ash units, so they have to follow federal law. And finally, the U.S. Department of Labor announced today that its Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA, will extend the public comment period on proposed amendments to existing federal standards that protect the nation's miners from health hazards related to workplace exposure of respirable crystalline silica, or silica dust. They have extended the public comment period through September the 11th. So get your comments in support of our country's coal miners not dying of black lung.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.
Which side are you on?